Let me introduce you our host today. It's going to be our executive director. Give it up for Kathleen Thompson.
Thank you, Sam, and thanks everyone for being here today. Before we get started, I want to say a quick word of thanks to our hardworking staff who put up the blog that you read, who wrote the email that you read, who designed the great-looking graphics that you saw on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. If you're a Progress Texas staff member and you can stand up, would you please stand up? That's Stevie, Tatum, Chris, Sam, D'Angelo, Reagan, Haley. For this statewide organization, we have a huge footprint, but a really small dedicated staff, and I appreciate all of you. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Progress Texas Happy Hour. I'm Executive Director Kathleen Thompson. We're coming to you live from the Texas Democratic Party Convention in beautiful El Paso. First, let me welcome all the dedicated Texas progressives who just arrived, who are gathering. We're looking forward to some serious rabble-rousing this weekend. Are you all? Welcome, everybody, and please say hey to the audience listening at home. Hey! Lots of fun, connections, conversations in store at the convention this weekend, and Progress Texas is proud to be here. But the fact of the matter is that there's some very serious business at hand as we unify in resistance to the continued conservative, Christian nationalist, Republican assault on our basic freedoms, not just here in Texas, but nationwide. On our minds at this event, and for this discussion that we're about to have in particular, is the vicious assault on our basic human rights of reproductive freedom. This is the third in a series of conversations featuring some of the most interesting and influential Texans in our progressive and Democratic circles, including, so far, Democratic nominee for Congress, Julie Johnson of Dallas, State Rep. Gina Hinojosa of Austin, right on, and several Texas women in municipal leadership positions. Our intent is to prompt similar conversations that all of you will have yourselves, with your families, your friends, your coworkers, your PCA parents, your sports clubs, and more. Because supporters of abortion rights must have a full understanding of what we're up against. And we have to exert our power as voters as we hit the ballot box this November as a unified and unstoppable force. For this third and live special installment, we've assembled 3 Texas women who are leading the fight to regain our abortion and reproductive freedoms that have been so cruelly stripped away. First, an Austin area mom who up until recently probably didn't envision that she'd be appearing in talks like this. Faced with a life-threatening pregnancy of her own and the denial of care by Texas doctors needed to survive and preserve her own life and her own reproductive care, she's courageously taken on this fight for other pregnant Texans so they don't have to face the frightening experience that she was forced into by our government. We're very proud to welcome to the discussion today, and for the first time to Progress Texas Podcasts, Amanda Zarowski.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Amanda Zarowski. Nailed the pronunciation of the last name, so very impressive. Really excited to be here. Just the fact that all of you are here and showing your support is really awesome and really inspiring, so thanks.
Thanks, Amanda. Returning to the Progress Texas podcast feed is one of our Democratic primary endorsees from back in March. She's a child of immigrants, a fierce advocate for equity and healthcare access, a family business owner, and after winning her March primary outright, please welcome the official Democratic nominee for the U.S. House of Representatives seat for District 15, Michelle Vallejo.
Hola a todos. It is truly an honor to be here with all of you in beautiful El Paso, Texas. And I know that we are in this fight together. And so it is so heartwarming to be here with Amanda and here with Senator Wendy Davis. And I know that people understand what's on the line. We just need to make sure that they know that they have the power to make a difference by showing up to vote this November. So thank you so much for all the work you've done, all the work we're going to do this weekend. And like I always say, vamos por 15, because we're going to flip Texas 15.
Thank you, Michelle. And our third and final guest is one who requires no introduction, but yes, we're going to anyway. A single mom who persevered through childhood poverty, a single teenage mother who achieved a Harvard Law degree, and went on to win election to the Texas Senate District 10 in my home county, Tarrant County, famous for her 11-hour 2013 filibuster against what were then considered draconian limits on abortion access in Texas, and later went on to be our Democratic nominee for governor. She's now senior advisor for Planned Parenthood Texas Votes. Everyone, please welcome Wendy Davis.
Hey, everyone. Hi. I'm so little, so I had to stand up so I can see all your beautiful faces. Thank you so much for being here for this incredibly important conversation. I'm so proud to be here with my #1 congressional candidate this cycle, Michelle Vallejo. She is running in the most flippable seat in this state. And if you are listening and you aren't supporting Michelle yet through a monthly donation, I invite you to join me in doing that because she needs all of our help and she's going to win. She truly is. And her race is going to make the difference in making sure that we regain the majority in the U.S. House. So make sure everyone support Michelle Vallejo. And then I'm so proud to be here with Amanda Zarowski. Maybe one day I'll be introducing her as my favorite congressional candidate. I have a feeling that might be a future scenario. I don't know, maybe. She obviously is such an inspiration to all of us, so strong, such a fighter, and she is a voice for so many people whose voices need to be heard in this conversation in this state right now. And thank you, Progress Texas, for hosting all of us for one of the most important conversations we can have. And before I put the microphone down, I do want to put a plug in. Planned Parenthood Texas Votes tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m. We're going to have our caucus to also be talking about these important issues, how you can get involved politically and using your voice to help make a difference. And it's going to be right next door in Juarez Room A, 9:30 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. What a panel, and thank you to the three of you for helping us kick off the convention. Our goal here tonight is to have a candid conversation about abortion rights, about our bodily autonomy, and about our futures compromised in far too many Republican-dominated states by a trampling of our basic freedoms that, again, depending on the outcome of this November's election, could very well spread into a national abortion ban, and worse. Just days ago, to nobody's surprise really, the Texas Supreme Court handed down a decision in the lawsuit filed by 20 pregnant Texans and their doctors, with Amanda as the lead plaintiff. Unfortunately, the ruling only exacerbated fears for Texans and their doctors, and we're going to discuss that shortly. We're also up against a U.S. Supreme Court stacked against abortion rights, possibly for a generation, and similarly biased extremist judges across the country, many of whom were appointed by a convicted felon and certainly the Republican nominee, former President Donald Trump, whose second term would jeopardize all of our lives. So the fight before us, listeners, is for the very survival of America as we know it. I'd like for you three to think back on the moment when you realized that the assault on our reproductive rights was truly a threat. Can you recall a particular moment over the last decade or so when you felt this tide turning against our basic bodily autonomies? And Wendy, would you start first?
Sure. I'm going to stand up again so everyone can see. Obviously, 2013, when I filibustered the bill that sought to close almost every abortion clinic in Texas. And back then, they had to be a little more subtle about it through targeted regulations of abortion providers. And of course, they tried to put in place the kind of regulations that would close almost every one of our abortion clinics. And we understood at the time how very real the threat to our rights were. There was an article recently that the New York Times did, an interview with Hillary Clinton about a book that she just wrote about the overturning of Roe. And she talked about the fact that for such a long time, you could see this threat coming, and yet so many believed that we were never going to see the overturning of Roe. And now here we are, and we're facing so many calamitous outcomes, not only because of the ban that's in place right now, but because they want to do even more. And as bad as it is right now, the even more is coming. And if we don't believe that, we need only look at what's happened in the last couple of years since Dobbs. So we have to take it seriously. And we have to make sure that we talk to people in our communities, in our circles, as Kathleen said a moment ago, about why we cannot decide this is our new normal. Because this isn't our new normal. This is actually as good as it's going to be for a while. It's going to get worse. But we do have the power to do something about it. And I truly believe in our power to do it. It won't happen overnight. And we can't get discouraged by virtue of the fact that that's the case. They didn't give up when Roe passed in 1973. It took them 50 years to overturn it. It will not take us that long, but we have to be vigilant in making sure that it doesn't.
So I'm running to represent a district right on the border in South Texas, and we've always had a struggle and a fight to access just basic health care. And I grew up alongside my mom and her healthcare journey. So my mom had multiple sclerosis since I was very young. Back then, they didn't know what it was. I was about 4 years old, and unfortunately, she passed away in 2010. And many times, we had to go out of the South Texas region, travel many hours, also travel to Mexico. So I already had an idea of the challenges that we faced in South Texas. But then when we started seeing things most recently with SB 8 passing in Texas, even before the fall of Roe, when Texas passed a near abortion ban, and I will be very transparent with everybody. I am 32 years old. I'm a young woman. I'm looking to live my life in Texas, a good life in Texas. I want to grow my family. But what we're seeing is women having a target on their back. It is a very scary time for anyone who's pregnant in the state of Texas. And for me, it's very personal, not just because of my journey with my mom in my childhood, but because I know that the people I'm fighting to represent already have a lack of access to healthcare. So I could only imagine the challenges, and I don't even have to imagine them anymore because it's happening. Women are having to flee the state of Texas. We all know the story of Kate Cox, a mother of two who wanted to grow her family, who wants to grow her family. And had Ken Paxton threatened doctors and hospitals around her not to provide care for her. So we know that extremist politicians are out for every opportunity, every chance of access to making our own healthcare decisions. And so little by little, as somebody who grew up in Texas, somebody who's been living here, I know that there's been an attempt to strip our rights away and our freedoms. And for me, as a candidate running in a purple seat, I have to work really hard to find commonality and build bridges. But when it comes to protecting women, mothers, our families, and access to healthcare, that's not a political decision. That is something that affects us all. And so I know that we're on the right side of this fight. And with champions like Wendy, champions like Amanda, who are choosing to come out front, put their personal lives on the line, that's what it's gonna take for us to win back the freedoms that we've already lost.
Amanda, would you answer the same question, but will you tell us, were you aware of what was happening before you and Josh decided to start your family?
So I'm a little different in this conversation. I will admit I was a little more naive. I was actively undergoing fertility treatment when the Dobbs decision was leaked. I was furious just because I've always been pro-choice, and I believe that women should be able to make decisions for their own bodies. But I didn't see how that could immediately impact me. As somebody who is actively working very, very hard to get pregnant, an abortion was not in my realm of possibility. Very soon, though, I learned that these laws are very sneakily written, and they bake a lot into these laws that would possibly impact me right away. If you've never gone through fertility treatment, you might not know that the chance of multiples is much higher when you do IVF and you do some of these drugs. So I cannot carry more than one child at a time. And so we had a very serious conversation with my doctor and said, well, if I happen to get pregnant with multiples, what does that mean? Would we have to do a selective reduction? And he said, yes, probably for your physical ability to carry, but you won't be able to do it in Texas. And so that's when the alarm started going off, like, oh, this might actually be something that we have to deal with. And then as I started learning more, it became very scary. And it was several weeks or months later where I found myself in the hospital, in the ICU, literally fighting for my life. And the irony of the TV in that hospital room was broken, and it was stuck on one channel that was just playing over and over in a loop coverage of the trigger ban that had gone into effect 2 days after my water broke. So from that day on, as soon as I was stable enough, my husband Josh and I, Josh is here with me today, we decided right away, like, we're doing something about this, because if I didn't get it, think of all of the other people that don't get it. And so I have been speaking out about every single opportunity, every single ban that goes into effect, because it just keeps getting crazier and crazier, and I have to stop saying that, because then I wake up and they outlaw IVF, and then they're coming for contraception, and it just keeps getting worse. And I'm telling you, people, especially people that don't live in states like Texas, don't get it. But when they get it, when you make them see, when you make them understand what these bans and what these laws really mean, they get mad. And so together, we have to keep spreading awareness, not just in Texas, but beyond. These conversations are tough to have with your neighbors and with your friends and in your communities, but that's the work that we have to do, because that's when people start to change their minds and hopefully change their votes.
I want to follow up on what you just said, Amanda, about people who still have their reproductive freedom and they don't get it. Any of us with friends or family outside of Texas, or if we're traveling outside of Texas, can see that the situation in Texas looks a lot more dire when we leave the state, or to our friends who leave the state. Let's say you're talking with a woman who still enjoys full reproductive freedom about the experiences here in Texas. How do you describe the situation so that they do get it? Michelle, would you start?
Sure. So, I've connected with other candidates across the country, and last cycle, they told me that they weren't afraid. This cycle, they are, because they know that having the wrong people in office means that they're going to implement a national abortion ban. And they're going to be experiencing the same fear and terror that our families and our women are experiencing every day. And, I want to tell people outside of Texas that I see you, I hear you. Right now, we have women and families having to flee the state of Texas, and that means that's going to make their access to healthcare a little more challenging as well. Instead of making investments in Texas to make sure that we have more specialists, that we have more doctors, we have more healthcare practitioners, Texas is choosing to do the opposite. But I truly have confidence that we could change this. This is why this election is so pivotal, because extreme politicians, extreme Republicans, have already said that they want a national abortion ban. My opponent applauded when SB 8 came into effect. She celebrated the very legislation and policies that have real life consequences. And now, in this cycle, what she's done is scrubbed her website of any mention of her stance, even though that we know how extreme she is on it. While she wants to hide and lie to our community, we are being very loud and clear that freedom is on the line, democracy is on the line, and the lives of our family members, the people that we love dearly, is on the line. And people across the country are seeing that. So, we're not alone in this fight. And this is something that I've seen change little by little, but actually it's been changing really quickly. And so that's why we need to ring the alarm. I used to think it was a gradual effect, but having people like my opponent, Monica de la Cruz, in office is a threat to all of us and all of our families. So I want to tell everybody across the country, pay attention to these pivotal races, pay attention to South Texas, pay attention to my campaign, because this is something that could truly affect everybody and will affect everybody across the country.
Go ahead, Wendy.
You know, I think the most important thing, honestly, is that people like Amanda do exactly what she's doing. So often we talk about important issues like this, and they don't really hit home until we see it through the lens of someone who's experienced what it means to have bans in place like Texas has. And Amanda and her husband Josh have been so courageous about sharing that story and making sure that people understand these impacts. And just like Amanda said, she didn't think this is something that would actually impact her even when Dobbs happened. And there are people that are living that same myth right now. And unless we share these stories and come forward and help people understand what the impacts are, they aren't going to respond in a way that is impactful, because we tend not to react electorally, organize ourselves, organize our neighbors, turn out to vote, unless we are afraid or mad. It hasn't been since Obama's election in 2008 that we actually were motivated by hope. And unfortunately right now, fear seems to be the primary motivator to get us to wake up and react in a way that's actually going to create the change that we want to see. I want to make sure and say in this room, so you will share these statistics with everyone you talk to, because surprisingly, even in Texas, where we have this horrific ban in place, almost 40% of people that were surveyed recently did not know that Texas does not have an exception for rape and incest. And let's be clear about that. That means an 11-year-old girl who becomes impregnated by an abuser has no options in our state. In Texas, in the 16 months after Senate Bill 8 passed, our 6-week ban, in the 16 months after that happened, there were 26,313 recorded rape-resulting births in the state of Texas. Remember when Greg Abbott said he was going to end rape? Remember that? Well, he hasn't succeeded. And now not only has he not succeeded in doing that, but people who are impregnated by virtue of an abuser are having to carry those pregnancies to term if they don't have the privilege of leaving the state of Texas. The other really important statistic for us to share with our friends and neighbors is that 82% of additional births in Texas have now been to teens and Latinas. And it tells you something about where this impact is most heavily falling. We know there are incredible abortion funds in our state and elsewhere that are doing everything they can to raise money and help people get the care that they need. But the reality is that there are so many people, you could charter a private jet for them and they still could not leave the state to get that care. And they are the ones that are living the consequences of this law. It is real, and it has tremendous human impact. And we need to talk with each other about the human consequences of laws like this. And as I said, it's literally only going to get worse.
Amanda, would you answer the same question?
I agree with everything Michelle and Wendy said. I think it's about making people understand that no matter where you live, no matter what state you live in, a Trump administration means no one is safe. I think it's also about talking to folks about their elected officials on the local level, and understanding that having the wrong people in place in your state Supreme Courts, in your Congress people, in your senators, having the wrong people could cause you your rights literally overnight. I think there's also still a great deal of work to do on destigmatizing the word abortion and educating people and making them see that abortion is just healthcare. I think, MAGA Republicans have just stigmatized and politicized and weaponized that word to no end, and there's a lot to undo in helping people understand that it's just healthcare and everybody has a right to access healthcare. And then the only other thing I'll add is I think we need to have more men as part of the conversation. Shout out to my husband, Josh, who he is very passionate about this. And something he talks about, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm the one with the microphone right now, so sorry. Something he talks about a lot is helping people understand that this is a human rights issue. This is not just a women's rights issue. This is a human rights issue. We also talk a lot about how everybody knows someone, everybody loves someone who has had an abortion, who needs an abortion, who will need an abortion. And again, it just goes to educating, destigmatizing, and getting more people involved.
Thank you all for those great answers. Something that Michelle was just talking about was her opponent, who's the incumbent, scrubbing her website of her anti-abortion stance. Republicans are hiding from this issue, but all of us in Texas have been a little bit removed from the national conversation. We don't have the means to place abortion directly on the ballot. We don't have the referendum abilities here. That's too much democracy. Since Dobbs, though, the public elsewhere has enthusiastically supported our basic reproductive freedoms in conservative-leaning states like Kansas, like Ohio. But of course, rabid anti-abortion forces are in firm control of the Republicans nationwide. I'd like to hear what you all think about prioritizing abortion rights and reproductive freedom as a key issue this fall. Will abortion be enough to make a major difference in the results this November? Amanda?
I certainly think so. I'm very hopeful. I am an official surrogate on the Biden-Harris re-election campaign, and so I am traveling the country talking about this issue, and I can tell you people are fired up everywhere. In battleground states, in safe states, in everywhere I've been, people are very fired up about this issue. And we know that in every election where abortion is on the ballot, Democrats win. And so I think that one of our key demographics to target is younger voters who might not think that this is their issue yet, or they don't see how it impacts them yet. So I think there's a lot of education and mobilization that we can do there. But again, I think once people understand how this can affect them, it's going to move the needle. Again, this isn't just about women's rights or reproductive rights. It goes so much farther beyond that, and helping them connect those dots goes a long way.
Go ahead, Michelle.
So this issue affects so many different parts of our life. It even goes down to affecting us in our wallets. And in my district, a lot of people are concerned about being able to afford things, being able to afford the things that their families need right now. And so when you take away options to plan for your family to grow, when, where, and why you're going to grow your family, that's going to hurt people personally in many different ways. And I think for people in my district, they understand very clearly that this is an infringement of government getting involved in private healthcare decisions that no one should be getting involved in. We don't need Greg Abbott in our bedrooms. We don't need Monica de la Cruz at our doctor's offices. We need them out of office. And right now, they're getting too involved and too emboldened in taking away our rights. And here in Texas, we love our freedom, and we will fight for it. We will fight for our families, and we will fight to make our choices on every single issue. And I will say that this is a great bridge to connect with people who might be shy about talking about abortion, who might have never even whispered it in their homes. I myself grew up like that. We didn't even whisper abortion in my home because it was too scary, too taboo, and it was wrong. But now, we're not shying away from it. I'm a young candidate. I'm a female, I'm a woman on the trail. I've been told you're talking about women's rights too much. You're talking about access to abortion too much, but I never shied away. And as we've gotten closer and closer to November, I think our community and our country is waking up to see how critical this issue is. And so I have no doubt that this is an issue that people are paying attention to and that it will move voters because it is impacting us individually on so many different levels.
Wendy, I have a part B for this that's specifically for you. After all these years fighting for our abortion rights, you're the senior advisor to Planned Parenthood Texas Votes. Will you tell us about the strategic electoral work you're doing this highest stakes election year?
Absolutely. Thanks for that question, Kathleen. So what we're seeing is that with Democratic voters, abortion is the #1 issue. And that obviously speaks to why our candidates are talking about it on the campaign trail so much. As Kathleen said, constitutionally, we do not have the right to citizen-initiated ballot measures. The only way we can get an issue on the ballot is if 2/3 of the Texas House and 2/3 of the Texas Senate agree to put it there, and the governor doesn't veto it. As you know, that's an incredibly high hurdle. But what we do have the opportunity to do is to use elections to make our statements in the same way that other states are making those statements through their ballot initiatives. You know there's a really important one going on in Arizona right now, Florida right now. Every state that has worked on this issue, that has the ability to use this as an issue, has seen historic turnout, and it has won every single time that it's been on the ballot. At Planned Parenthood Texas Votes, we are very specifically focused on state house seats that we believe that we can flip either in this cycle or the next 2 or 3. We've got 1.3 million people in our identified Planned Parenthood supporter universe. 300,000 of them. These are people who have taken an action in some way. They've signed a petition, or they've donated online, or they've shown up at an event, or they've filled out a card when they visited one of our health centers saying that they want to get more involved politically. Out of that 1.3 million people in our database, 300,000 of them are not registered to vote, even though they care about this issue. And 200,000 of them are very low propensity voters. They trust Planned Parenthood. They care about reproductive rights. And we know that with our brand and our message, supporting incredible candidates like Michelle and working in those districts where we know we have an opportunity to flip seats, if we focus on turning out our supporters, we will win. And we just saw a great example of this actually in a Houston primary runoff race where Lauren Ashley Simmons, give it up for Lauren. Lauren won, and we worked with other C4 organizations on the ground, Equality Texas, Texas Organizing Project, and others, and we knocked the doors of our identified supporters in that district. We talked to them repeatedly. We turned them out, and Lauren Ashley Simmons beat Sean Theory by double digits. It works. It works. So we're excited about what the future holds for us. And we know that the most important thing that we can do is to elect people like Michelle so that we do regain a majority in the U.S. House and we can keep a national abortion ban from becoming reality. But we also know that the only way we're really going to claw our way back in Texas is by making sure that the next time we have a redistricting cycle in 2031, we have a majority of Democrats in the Texas House. And that is not a pipe dream, that is reality, and with your help, we're gonna make it happen.
We're all here for the Texas Democratic Convention. The Texas Republican Convention was just held in San Antonio, and part of their continued assault on reproductive freedom equates abortion with murder, complete with the possibility of the death penalty, and conceivably with no statute of limitations placing every person who has ever gotten or assisted in the providing of an abortion in Texas in tremendous legal jeopardy. It's unbelievable, but here we are. Do we think that given the opportunity, they'd actually do this? Yes. They're idiots. That's what I thought. When I talk about this year's election to the low propensity voters that Wendy's speaking of, the apolitical, infrequent voters in my life, I am talking about freedom. The freedom to choose our own elected officials without partisan political interference. I talk about the freedom to live in my community free from pollution and gun crime, and the freedom to make a badass 9-leg parlay on a ball game to make some extra money for my family. These are all things I cannot do as a Texan under Republican control. When I talk about abortion to my Republican friends and family, and I have them, I talk about freedom and the right to control my own body and my own future. For all three of you concerning messaging and abortion terminology, what is your advice on how to talk about this issue in a way that will persuade the independent voters and the moderate Republicans that do exist that we want to vote with us this November? Go ahead, Amanda.
That's a good question. I think it's tough. I think, again, it goes back to making them see that this is a human rights issue. And this is the first time, at least in my lifetime, that I have seen a right that I had be taken away from me. Certainly, we've seen fighting to gain rights, like in the LGBTQ community, but this is the first time that I know of that it has been something that I had that has now been taken away. My mother had more rights than me. My grandmother, who turns 100 on Tuesday, had more rights than me. And now, if the Texas GOP gets their way, my embryos will have more rights than me. And so just helping people understand that they won't stop here. They will come for other people's rights. I don't even want to go down the rabbit hole of what they'll take away from us next, but if they're not afraid to strip away our access to our health care, where will they stop? They won't. And I think just helping people understand that can really be a wake-up call.
You know, I have thought about this many times on the campaign trail, right? Because in Texas 15, I need to assure everybody in my community that I'm out for them, right? I'm not out for a political party or a political agenda. I'm out for the people of South Texas. And I always think about this moment on the campaign trail last year when I visited the county fair in Live Oak County. This is the deepest, reddest part of Texas 15. And I remember an older gentleman came up to me. He was in overalls and said, "You're Michelle Vallejo." And, well, Vallejo. You're Michelle Vallejo. And you and I are not alike because I am pro-life and pro-Second Amendment, and you're not. And I said, well, actually, I think we have a lot more in common than you think. First of all, I grew up in Texas. You know, I grew up going hunting with my uncles. We had ranches and farms, and for us, I think also something that we share in common is that we care about gun safety. But also, we care about our children who are going to school and making sure that they come back home safe. And he was like, okay. And I said, when it comes to you being pro-life, I know that we have a lot in common as well. Because we are Texans. We love our freedom. And we don't like the idea of government getting involved in private, personal healthcare decisions. And he was like, I really like the sound of that. And then I asked him for a picture. And he said, win first, and then you get that picture. So I'm on that mission, but there's a way to build bridges. There's a way to connect with our community members without seeing, they're registered Republicans, we're not gonna talk to them. I don't have that luxury in South Texas. And you know what? I love connecting with Republicans because we really I could see in their eyes when the light turns on and they say, you know what? I'm gonna consider voting for a Democrat. And that to me gives me hope. Because there are people who are Republican moderates, the never Trumpers, and they're calling themselves that. And I'm like, we need to put that on a shirt. Never Trumpers for Michelle Vallejo. But yeah, there's hope, and there's ways to connect with our community, even if they have very different opinions and perspectives.
Well said, both of you. The only thing I would think to add to that is I think it's really important for us to understand that these laws that impact reproductive freedoms are coming for every single one of us. Eventually, they truly are. And Michelle and Amanda both spoke to what it means in an individual's life when we lose those freedoms, what it can mean for us economically, what it can mean for our opportunities for ourselves and for our families. But it's so much more than that, too. It's the bottom line of our economy overall as well. Because when women gained the rights that we gained in Griswold versus Connecticut, which gave us contraceptive care, and in Roe versus Wade, which of course gave us safe and legal abortion care, our participation in the workforce skyrocketed, and our economy skyrocketed alongside it. While we are working to pull women's rights back in this country, other countries like Japan, for example, are doing everything they can to make sure that women are a success in the workforce. You probably saw in the paper in the last couple of days that Ken Paxton and two professors at UT have sued the Biden administration because it issued new guidance under Title IX, reminding our colleges of the fact that they are not allowed to discriminate on the basis, of course, of gender and everything that comes along with it, including pregnancy. And these professors sued because they said, we're not going to excuse the absences of students who leave our state to go get care. And we're going to fire any teaching assistant that we find has accessed through the mail, trying to bring that good old Comstock Act into being again, if they access through the mail abortion medications. We have employers that are being told by state lawmakers, we are going to pass a bill that prohibits you and will penalize you if you help an employee leave the state to get the care that they need. And those things collectively have an impact. Who wants to come work in a state where they're afraid of that? Who wants to come to school in a state where they're afraid of that? So the reality is these laws are coming for us all, not just people who may face the need for abortion care or who have a family member or a loved one who may face the need for that. It is going to have a ripple effect for our state, which we are proud of and we want to see thrive, and we have to help make that argument with people so that they understand this is a big, broad issue with huge, huge implications, and we cannot afford to sit it out and decide that we're going to live with this new normal.
That's a great answer, Wendy. And I want to thank you all for being here and for being part of this empowering conversation. I feel pumped up. I've been ready to vote, get through the primary and ready to vote for November. We're going to be supporting Planned Parenthood Texas votes. We're going to be supporting Michelle Vallejo. And we're going to be looking for you on the campaign trail with the Biden-Harris team. And thank you for both of you for sharing your story. It means a lot to me as a mom that you would come out of anonymity to help protect other Texans. I really appreciate it. So what a great group. Thank you to District 15 Congressional Democratic nominee Michelle Vallejo, reproductive freedom advocate Amanda Zarowski, and former state senator and current senior advisor to Planned Parenthood Texas Votes, Wendy Davis. A huge thank you to our live audience. We're just getting started. Stay hydrated, wear comfortable shoes, and swing by our Progress Texas booth to get the merch to match your values this election year. Please make a plan to talk about abortion rights with your friends and family upon your return home. Follow Progress Texas on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter for conversation starters. If you're opinionated like all of us here, please drop us a review and a 5-star rating on the podcast platform of your choice. Thanks again for your support, and bye.